SAU55 board meeting of October 18th, 2017. I'll call the meeting to order at 7:02, it appears. Mrs. Belcher, will you call the roll?
Kathleen Abruzzese, Peter Bielo,
Here.
Brian Boyle,
Here.
Jason Cipriano,
Here.
Stephanie Doobie, Kimberly Farah,
Here.
Donna Green,
Here.
Dan Guide, Caitlin Parnell,
Here.
Susan Sherman,
Here.
Gregory Spiro,
Here.
James Sweeney,
Here.
Kelly Ward, Karen Yasenka.
Here.
Present for administrators this evening are the Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Earl Metzler. Expected is the Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Roxanne Wilson, and Business Administrator, Attorney Jeffrey Dow.
Stand for the pledge, please. And Mr. Sweeney, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Chair,
I'd like to move that we live stream this meeting. I make a motion that we live stream this meeting.
I'm not going to accept that motion. We don't have the capability to do that tonight.
Do you know that?
So I'd like to
Do you
move
know that as a
move
fact?
on to our agenda if I could. First thing on our agenda is to go into non-public session. Can I get a motion? Thank you, Mr. Cipriano.
Move that the board go into non-public session under RSA 91A:3, paragraph 2. I think that's L. Is that
Is
L?
L, consideration of
Just wanted to
legal
make
advice
sure.
in writing or oral argument.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you.
Mrs. Abruzzese, I'm sorry, Mr. Bielo,
Yes.
Mr. Boyle,
Yes.
Mr. Cipriano,
Yes.
Dr. Farah,
Yes.
Mrs. Green,
No.
Mrs. Parnell,
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman,
Yes?
Mr. Spiro,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
and Mrs. Yasenka.
Yes.
Forward.
So,
I asked Dean.
call the meeting back to order from our non-public back into public at, I think that's 7:50, according to the Timberlane clock. Mr. Cipriano,
Move that we seal the non-public minutes.
Second.
motion by Mr. Cipriano, second by Mr. Guide.
I just have a question, so when you seal the minutes, you're supposed to cite what the
Yes,
reasons?
I was gonna
Yep.
say that.
So, under the divulgence of information would likely adversely affect the reputation of any person other than a member of the public body itself.
And we do need 2/3, right?
Can we wait for Peter?
Okay, all in favor of sealing the minutes, say aye or raise your hand. Is that 11? Opposed? 1. I believe that's a 2/3, so. All right, back onto our agenda then. So we have approval of October 4th, public and non-public minutes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I move the board approve the October 4th, 2017 public and non-public minutes.
Second.
Discussion, questions, corrections?
Correction,
Yes, Kathleen?
I abstained from a motion.
What page are you on?
I'm gonna find it. It was regarding the goals.
So that'd be page 3.
So page 3, yep. Motion failed, I believe it should be 2, 10, and 1, and I'm the abstention.
I can check, I did double check my tallies, so if you're willing, if you would like to check, I'm happy to make that change, Madam Chair.
Yes. Are we all right with that? So it would be 2, 10, 1 with Mr. Beal and Mr. Guide for the motion, and Mrs. Abrazizi abstaining, okay? Yeah, Donna?
Thank you. At the meeting, I did not hear, on the motion on the top of page 3, Mr. Guide motioned to seal the minutes of the non-public until they are reviewed at the next board meeting. I don't think the motion actually said that. I think the sentiment was expressed that that might be the case, but I think the motion was simply to seal the minutes. And also, the motion failed. 2/3 vote required. That was, I mean, in point of fact, it failed, but that was not mentioned at the meeting.
Yep, that slipped through my fingers.
Right, so, I think it needs to be mentioned that,
It's 2/3 required.
well, yeah, but it was not,
We
recognized
thought,
by.
you're saying you thought we had sealed the minutes. We thought,
Everyone thought we
okay,
had sealed the minutes.
everyone thought we had sealed the minutes, when in fact, when we went back to look at the count, we realized between
Correct,
Kathy and I that we had, oops, that wasn't a 2/3.
that's right. So I would like that reflected in the minutes.
As editorial to the minutes that reflects something that happened outside of the minute,
Yeah, I don't, it's
Madam-
outside of the
Madam Chair,
minute.
Point of order.
Yeah.
First, it was just discussed publicly, so it's now in.
In the
recorded
next set of
public
minutes.
meeting. Second, these minutes accurately reflect what
What
occurred,
we
which is
did.
what we're really here to do, to make sure that they accurately reflect what occurred. I don't, unless I've misunderstood, Mrs. Green isn't disputing that these are inaccurate. These are accurate, they're reflecting what occurred.
So,
Well, it
These
says the
minutes.
motion failed, when in fact, in the meeting, it said the motion passed.
I know,
So, in the meeting, it said the motion passed. So if we're gonna say in the minutes, the motion failed because we subsequently realized there wasn't a 2/3 vote, then that should be an editorial addition.
Kathleen?
All right, so I do recall, Mr. Guide making a motion to seal the minutes of the non-public until they were reviewed by the meeting, by the board at the next meeting. I remember that being the motion. I remember after we took the votes, the only thing that was said was okay, and then we proceeded. So I don't see any need for any changes here.
Certainly, this discussion is gonna be in this set of minutes, that we let that slip past us and that we're correcting it. That
Madam Chair?
motion failed.
I agree with Kathleen. I heard Mr. Guide say that as well. So I'm sure that's correct. That part of it's correct.
Kim?
I do agree with Donna, though, because what you're gonna have is you're gonna have somebody listening to oh, no, I guess we're not gonna have anybody listening to the meeting, so in this case, it's irrelevant. It
It'll
would
be
a
in the
problem
minutes.
If there were two different, there was a record and then there was this, but apparently we have no record of the meeting, video record.
All the more reason to make this record truthful and accurate.
Well, they're not sealed.
They're-
That's truthful and accurate.
This is an accurate record. And furthermore, I would just suggest that because this accurately reflects, we have historically not opined within our minutes on motions, and I'm leery to start opining because next week we'll come back and want to opine on something else. I mean, this accurately reflects what the vote was, and accurately reflects that it failed. There's no issue that I see with that recording of that. That's what happened.
It doesn't accurately reflect the understanding of the board at the time. The
Maybe I knew
understanding
it
of
failed
the
and
board-
didn't say anything.
No one knew it failed.
I don't know how you could possibly know that, but
Nothing.
All right, I'm gonna
no, I
stop.
don't know.
Oh,
how-
her, yeah.
I don't know what any of you are thinking.
Are there any other corrections or additions to the minutes, both public and non-public? If not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of accepting the minutes? Looks like 11. Opposed? 1. Mrs. Green, thank you. Moving on. Policy CBC. This is the second read of the slight change so that everything reads the same from one policy to another, so we're not tripping over these policies. So CBC, this is a second read.
I make a motion, we accept the second read.
Motion's been made, is there a second?
Second.
I'll accept it from Mr. Sweeney. Discussion? Yes, Donna?
As I said at the last meeting, the law requires us to set all the contracts for all the SAU staff, not just the professional staff. So I actually think this policy is illegal.
Thank you. Anyone else? Kim?
Looking at the salaries, I understand the salary for the human resource director is less than the salary for the,
What's that got to do with it?
well, it's just, because you're looking at professional staff, and you're leaving out, salary-wise, you're leaving out a professional staff member. The third highest paid professional staff member. That's all
You'll recall that I spent quite a bit of time this summer with legal assistance that I had been advised through numbers of you to seek legal advice to make sure we had these kind of policies straightened out. This was based on numbers of discussions with Mr. Upton, actually, to get the wording here to be consistent. So, any other thoughts, Mr. Beal?
Yeah, I am, at least in the environment that I work within, salary of an individual does not necessarily accurately portray where they are in the hierarchy of the organization. I've worked with many a salesperson in particular who's made a heck of a lot more money than I, but in the organizational chain, we're farther down the chain. So I would not consider that a useful criteria.
This is the second read of this policy to match the,
So I'm good with this.
Donna?
So I think that's an interesting point, that we need to, that it would be wise to define what professional is, because in the case of the third highest SAU employee, the third highest paid SAU employee, the job description called for, I think, a professional qualification. And, or ability to obtain a
Right back
professional,
around.
a
Right.
professional qualification.
Okay.
So therefore, it seems to me we're leaving out one of the positions that was actually, designed to require a professional qualification, which would make it a professional staff member.
Mr. Beal?
If that were the case, by analogy, within Timberlane or Hampstead, then all of the school nurses should be considered professional staff members, because they all have to have certifications of one sort or another. I mean, so again, I don't think it's a valid, I have to have certifications of one sort or another for my profession, and I'm not senior staff in my organization.
Any new thoughts? If not, I'm going to call for a vote.
Just
Yes,
a point of
Dr. Mansell.
clarification, third highest paid member of the SAU is the chief financial officer, sitting to my right.
I'm sorry, fourth.
I'm going to call for a vote on the second read, please. We need to move along. All in favor of accepting for second read and moving this into our policy book? We're voting yes. That's, I believe, nine. Opposed? 3 abstentions. Thank you. Now we're back to SAU budget. One of the things that you asked for, and I've tried to get this clarified a couple of times, what you wanted.
What about BCA?
Karen's.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, pardon me, Karen. I stepped right on your toes. No problem. Anxious to get to the budget. So, I can rephrase. You'll remember last spring, in discussion, we discussed having an ethics policy. Timberland has an ethics policy, Hampstead has an ethics policy, that we'd have one for the SAU board as well. You charged myself, Karen, Peter, and Kathleen to meet together and kind of see what best practices are. I'm going to turn the meeting over to Karen. She did a huge amount of research, and I want to thank her for that, for doing that for us, looking at what those policies are around. So does everyone have a copy of it?
No, I'm missing it. I have the X, but I don't have the policy itself.
Same here.
I think that's all there is. It's just one page. Yeah, it's just this.
It's this page.
Yeah, it's just this. That's all we're supposed to have? We're not supposed to have a BCA in front of us?
It's going to be called,
Right, we switched them out. So BCA is no longer in your packet. There were some changes made to it, and
these are the,
there was not time to reformat the language before
Okay.
tonight's meeting, so it will be reformatted to reflect.
we'll reformat it to that, so it looks exactly like what our policy page looks like. This is what Karen and you and I and Peter worked on.
Okay.
So I'm gonna turn the meeting over to Karen and let her take over, if that's all right with everybody.
Thank you. As Sue stated, we were charged with this in the spring. We started with Timberlane Code of Ethics and the Hampstead Code of Ethics. Both districts have their own, where people are asked to sign them, and we follow them at our own board meetings within district. But when we come together, we are forming a third governing body that did not have a code of ethics. Some people felt it was necessary, perhaps some felt it was not. Anyway, we did the research. We looked at a total of 17 different codes, some from New Hampshire, some from across the country. At first, we took and we combined and tried to choose what we thought was the best from Timberlane and the best from Hampstead. We then looked at SAU44 in Hampstead, which is northward, Nottingham, and Stratford. We looked at Windham, Campden, Keene, and Rumney. We also then looked at Code of Ethics from, we just picked different states, Kentucky, Connecticut, Illinois, Texas, New Jersey, and Arizona. There were quite a lot of commonalities, and I believe that is because the Code of Ethics is actually drafted by and put out by the state's school board association. So you're seeing a lot of the same provisions or tenets in each of these. And I just want to be clear to start, too, what the Code of Ethics really should be. It basically defines the way we want to do business of the board, how we interact with each other, and a standard by which we pledge to do business and conduct ourselves. This is not to be confused with a conflict of interest clause or a conflict of interest document, which would require other tenets, such as definitions of conflict of interest, requirements for conflict of interest. This is simply basically a way to say how we are agreeing as a board, how we will conduct business, and how we will deal with each other. This is not unusual. The executive branch in the state has RSA 21G29 that covers all state officials. Public Utilities Commissions have an ethics policy under RSA 36312. That states basically each employee will accept individual responsibility for his or her own conduct and will not engage in any conduct that would undermine his or her personal integrity or the reputation of the agency. There's a New Hampshire Board of Professional Engineers. There's the New Hampshire Board of Realtors, the Land Surveyors Association, and it goes on and on. Boards and groups just feel that a code of ethics is the way to conduct business. The Association of Superintendents in America have their own code of ethics, and that is something that Dr. Metzler adheres to by virtue of the fact that he's a member of that group. They are asked to sign and be part of that. So, in front of you, what you have is, we condensed it. Sometimes condensing something is a lot more difficult and takes a lot more time than having a very long document in front of you. But this is what the 4 members who worked on it thought would adequately provide some guidance for this board on how we will conduct business going forward. So, you have it in front of you.
I make a motion to table this document on the grounds it's unconstitutional.
Why is the Code of Ethics
Wait,
unconstitutional?
wait, we haven't gotten a second, we're not gonna discuss. Second, anybody?
I'll second for discussion.
Go
Thank
ahead,
you.
Karen.
Why is it
Because-
unconstitutional?
Because Timberlane had exactly the same provision in their Code of Ethics, and it was challenged by the New Hampshire Civil Liberties Union, and the Timberlane Board had to back down and expunge it from their ethics policy.
Which are you speaking
Which
to?
line?
Members will take no private action that will compromise the board or administration, and refrain from private actions which would undermine or compromise official board action.
Boy, that was one, every single one we read.
Yeah, and
All
it can't
over
stand up
the United
constitutionally.
States of America. It was in all of the ones we looked at. In fact, it was one of the ones that, wow.
Why would that be unconstitutional, that a board that you volunteer to be on, why would you then go to undermine the board that you're serving on?
As an elected official, you have to speak your mind. That is your duty as an elected official. And if you are opposed to official board action, you have a duty to your constituents to speak your mind.
You have a
This is-
duty to speak your mind, and you have an opportunity to speak your mind at the board. You can even write a dissenting document, if you like, and have it memorialized in the record. That's different than going around afterwards saying, this isn't gonna work. I disagree with this. Undermining the work of the board serves absolutely no purpose.
Except to enshrine our right to free speech. That's
No.
why it's unconstitutional.
Stop,
Free speech.
Mr. Beal.
I just want to point out that Mrs. Green made an erroneous statement in her preamble there. Timberlane may have removed that from its code of ethics, but there was no finding from a court that found it unconstitutional. That's her assumption, and that's a statement from her. That was not a finding by any legislature or court. So,
Thank you, I'm not aware of any either. In all our research, this is in many state documents, and I don't think it would be allowed to be there if it had been found unconstitutional.
absolutely.
May I?
This is for first read, so.
Freedom of speech also isn't really just a carte blanche that you can just say whatever you want whenever you feel like it. There is some, you have to consider libel and slander. There needs to be a check on unethical or improper behavior of public officials and elected officials. There is a tort or civil wrong for defamation. You are not allowed to just, in a public meeting, defame people. That will not be upheld in a court. And the reason for that is defamatory statements really lowers a person's credibility and their esteem to other people watching. And you really do open yourself up to liability from each person who you are defaming by doing that.
This conversation had nothing to do with defamation, and it had everything to do with an elected official's duty to disagree with a board decision. That you're twisting it into defamation and salivating at the thought of censure
Okay,
a board
stop,
member.
stop. Going there.
it's quite
I entertain a
offensive.
motion to move this to first read and move this on.
There's a motion on the floor.
There is a motion on the floor. Oh, yes, I forgot that one.
That motion you take.
So let's move on that motion then.
Can we repeat the motion?
Of course, Mrs. Belcher?
Mrs. Green, motion to table the policy on grounds of its being unconstitutional. It was seconded by Dr. Garrett.
Call for a vote. All in favor of the motion? 1. Opposed? Abstaining? 3. Did you get the count there?
Should be 1-9,
1,
no, 1-8.
1, 8, 3. Mr. Bealow?
I make a motion, we accept this for first read.
Second.
Could we just, can I just get the 3 abstentions, please? I'm sorry, I want to make sure the record.
Kim, Brian, and
Mr.
Greg.
Spiro, Mr. Boyle, and Dr. Farr.
And you have a new motion that I missed, I'm sorry.
To accept this for first read.
And seconded by Mr. Sweeney, I think, or Dan? Was it
Jim,
Jim.
so is this gonna be called BCA-X?
Yes, it will be.
Yes.
We'll put it in the format. We're sorry. We just
Peter
didn't.
say accept
I
BCA?
Except for
BCA.
first read, move it into the right formatting. It'll be BCA, yes. Call for a vote then. All in favor? 1, 2, 3. Get us? 9. Opposed? 2, 3. You get that, Kathy? Okay. So, on our 18th of, on the 18th of November, we'll, be there for second read. Now, back to the budget. You had asked, or we had discussed, oh, it wasn't asked, but salaries, in that salary line. So if anyone wants it, I have the 4 people that we are responsible for interviewing and hiring, and the rest of the, what I call the support salaries. Does anyone want this? Anyone else down on this side of the table?
Isn't it on the back of the budget?
No, it's a separate.
Did somebody down here need it?
I did not need it.
I don't need it. Thank you. Anybody on this side?
I don't want it.
So I'll take one.
2. Donna, don't you already have this?
I want to see your numbers.
Oh, sure. 3 people wanted it,
If we're
Donna,
gonna be
Greg.
discussing it then.
Kathleen, would you like a copy?
Yeah, thank you.
Karen, you don't need one. Dan, you don't need one? Jim, you're all set?
All set.
All set?
I want to make sure everybody's all set. And we're going to turn this portion over to, this is the 18-19 proposed budget. This is a second draft, I guess we would call it, where we're at this point. There have been some new things that have come up, and I'm going to turn the meeting over to Jeff and Dr. Metzler, yes, the both of you, or who's speaking?
Okay, well, just to open, and I appreciate that, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I do apologize, there are several new items in this that should have been included in the proposed budget 2 weeks ago. There have been several discussions, and Attorney Dowd is prepared to go into great detail about what those items are. Really, one is in a new equipment line, and the other has to do with information access?
Our timekeeping system. Our timekeeping.
Yeah, so, other than that, we, because there was no directive from the board, the rest of the budget as is, that, like you saw 2 weeks ago. So I'll turn this over to Attorney Dowd. He can walk you through and certainly explain line by line and answer any questions you have. Jeff?
Thank you, Dr. Metzler, Madam Chairman. I am Jeff Dowd, CFO Business Administrator for SAU55 and member districts. You'll note a second draft of the budget in front of you. The original budget was $2,196,355. The budget you're presented this evening is $2,215,511. The change is $19,156. The lines impacted are 2390, 360. Tech services, 8,867, and you'll see the equipment line adjusted 9,250 where there was nothing before, and 2390, 360 is also impacted $1,040 by a separate product. The total impact in line 2390, 360 tech services is $9,907. The 2390, 741 new equipment line is $9,250. I am more than happy to discuss
The two things impacting those lines, if I may.
Yeah, let's discuss the new equipment, since we haven't had anything that I guess we ever called new equipment for quite a few years, so let's discuss that.
We haven't, we really don't. The SAU itself does not own
Right.
much equipment.
Right.
And in evaluating what is going on amongst the districts, we have a very manual fingerprinting process right now. It's used for any of the district employees, coaches, volunteers. The system we have in place, we had not been aware, but it does contain, the ink used in that product does contain certain chemicals that are potentially hazardous, and it's an EZ ID 300 impeccable ceramic fingerprint pad, which contains listed as a carcinogen on the National Toxicity Program. And in addition to that, we have a very long turnover time now and a very manual process for taking fingerprints with ink and mailing them off. The fingerprints go through FBI certification through the state police, and we have a rate of failure, and we've undertaken a number of initiatives on training of our employees to take the fingerprints. The ink and the fingerprints are impacted by a lot of factors, including moisture and humidity and that sort of thing. The failure rate or rejection rate had been about 18%. That's not a rejection rate of fingerprints that came back as being rejected. That was 18% of fingerprints taken were not readable by or not up to standard by FBI and state police standards. The one solution that we're looking at is called an iTouch biometrics electronic fingerprint scanner. This has a number of advantages over our current system. It obviously is chemical free. The equipment itself, the scanner, is just shy of $9,000 for this particular option, this particular solution. We have, when the fingerprints are being taken, the reader itself can tell you what your degree of accuracy is in terms of reading. So it can tell you, well, 50% readable, we need more, and 60, 70, 80% readable until you get a readable print as observed by the machine. That then prints out and is mailed to the New Hampshire State Police, and we are expecting that the time reduction in this process could go from 2 weeks to as little as 5 to 7 days. And in addition to that, we expect a much lower rejection rate of those fingerprints. We have a number of ways we have employees and volunteers come in typically well ahead of time, and in some cases, when there is a rejection of the prints, we have to re-fingerprint, and there's an RSA on the books which only allows us to take fingerprints twice, and beyond that, there's a process that we have to go through that's not recommended by most police departments, which involves verification of the local police departments. So this is a solution that was in the works, didn't seem appropriate for either district. It belongs here at the SAU. It should help streamline our process and should help bring a faster and more certain process to that fingerprinting procedure which we are required to undertake. So were there any questions? I have $9,250 in the new equipment line, and I have maintenance, annual maintenance of about $1,040 on the equipment in the tech services line.
Interestingly enough, just as kind of coincidental, I was listening to the Plastow Budget Committee meeting last night. I know, I have an interesting life. So I was watching the Budget Committee meeting, and the Chief of Police of Plastow is requesting the same similar, or maybe the exact same equipment. And she made the statement of saying that the state police and federal people are not going to accept any of those old, what I call the old paper roll your thumb thing. They're all going to this electronic thing. It's not going to be would be nice to have. It's going to be you're expected to have. So I thought it was just coincidental that Plastow's already kind of, we've got to do it. Questions about fingerprinting? Donna?
Thank you. How much fingerprinting do we do, and why are we doing it?
We have, I believe, 190 prints last year, and out of which we had an 18% rejection rate. In the prior year, we had 186 total prints undertaken. We will fingerprint new employees, volunteers, coaches, any volunteers.
It's for safety of the students.
Okay, so, when Sandown needs a police check, it's for a police check, right? It's for criminal background check, these fingerprints, right?
Right.
Okay, so why don't we just send people to the police station to get fingerprinted, because that's what Sandown
Then they'd
does?
have to pay for it, right?
Well, they
Then
do
the
pay
town-
for it. The employees do pay for the fingerprinting now and the background check. We have a simple math problem, and for a police department to undertake, especially if they're on that manual ink process right now, to undertake almost 200 prints per year spread out throughout the district, there's not a lot of appetite amongst any of the police departments to have that be on their plate. I thought of a similar situation. Wouldn't it make sense to have them? Don't they do this? They're professionals and that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, it's too much volume, and based on an 18% rejection rate, it then adds a layer of difficulty to it from a process perspective on our end.
Right, but if they were doing it, it would not have an 18% rejection rate, because
right now
they're
it
the
does.
professionals. They wouldn't, the police wouldn't have a similar issue, because they do it all the time. So did the police department say that 200 prints a year is too much for them? Is this coming from them? Did we
That certainly
ask?
is my impression. Do you recall, Madam Chairman, what did Plastow cite any of their statistics?
You know what, I didn't hear her give statistics. She's got a lot. I mean, we've got a lot in Plastow. Same thing, though, she's doing all our volunteer coaches for our rec program, so every town who has volunteer coaches for baseball, each town is doing those for them. And I didn't hear the rejection rate, but they're getting them rejected as well. Even the professionals are getting them rejected. So with the old manual type scale, and they are the professionals doing it, and still they're getting a rejection rate. They're just not as good as these new electronic
Readers.
machines are. And I guess I would say, so if we have I'll use this as a scenario. We have a coach that comes here that's gonna coach softball and lives in Andover. Would you have him go to Andover to have his prints done there, and have Andover take that, Andover,
Sure, why not?
Massachusetts? Well, what kind of agreement would we have to have with Andover to allow, say, gee, we have a coach that's working for Timberlane, and we need you to do their fingerprinting and take the burden, the time, and the expense on Andover's.
But is it not the local police station that does the criminal records search anyway?
State does.
State police.
It's a state police that
police.
does, it's all sent to the state.
I suspect that would delay hiring.
I would
I
think
would suspect that would delay people's opportunity to volunteer and to coach and do many things. We're looking for a way to
That record.
expedite the process so that we can ensure that the kids are safe, that we have the right adults, supervising, watching, volunteering, coaching, et cetera. And this will help a great deal with speeding those things up so that we can process people more quickly and obviously more accurately.
Any other questions about fingerprinting? The additional expense there. Yes, Don?
Yes, it might make a difference of a few days in terms of getting volunteers on board, but I'm also looking at trying to keep our district affordable for parents and families. So I
I'd like to keep
personally
them
don't
safe,
see,
too.
they're safe now. I don't see any reason, I don't see a strong justification for this amount of money and an ongoing $1,000 every year for maintenance. I just don't see the business argument there.
Mr. Cipriano?
To the extent that we have a process in place that helps ensure the safety of our students, I'm comfortable expending the money, and that it's a responsible expense of this SAU board to provide this service to our districts. I'm not suggesting that the service couldn't be provided from other sources, and quite honestly, what are we really talking about? We're basically shifting cost, because it still costs money, it still gets done. I think this is a service that we have a responsibility to provide, because we have a responsibility to provide for the safety of our students.
Other questions about this budget?
Well, just a
Oh,
last
yeah,
thought on the
Kathleen.
fingerprinting. I can't recall if it is legislation that has been adopted or if it's working its way through the system. But I do believe that the school districts are gonna be responsible for background checks on bus drivers now, even if we contract our bus services out. Again, I don't know if it's in the process of working its way through or if it has already been adopted. So, I can't understand how we would be responsible for, potentially be responsible for bus drivers, even if they're contracted employees, and not be responsible for our own volunteers and employees.
Yeah, the volunteer issue has grown hugely. When Brian Boyle and I first coached 30 years ago, we didn't have to be fingerprinted. But if we both walked into both of our towns and were well-known in both our communities, say we'd like to do softball again, we'd both be fingerprinted by our towns because we're volunteering in our town. That's just the reality. They want to have those background checks. Other discussion of budget, this budget.
So, Attorney Dodd has another line that
course.
was added to,
Yes.
that didn't get discussed last time.
Yep.
So the second line item is, we have a timekeeping system that was implemented a number of years ago in order to streamline the then existing process. It's called Time Clock Plus. It is essentially a standalone system. I've always thought it to be a bit lunky. From a reporting perspective, it certainly is not the level of reporting that I would like to see. Our enterprise system, Infinite Visions, has in the past year or so had a partner called ExecuTime, who has become part of their company and integrated into their offering suite. And although I had this on the radar at some point in the near future, we were informed when we had a call recently that our current offering of our current Time Clock Plus platform is simply no longer supported.
So that's just gonna go away, and we wouldn't have any way to record when people come into work, clock in, so to speak, or clock out, so to speak, not that everybody clocks out, but
Yep.
we'd have no way to do that anymore, which would be a violation of
I think that we'd be setting ourselves up for significant Department of Labor
labor.
violations.
That's why we, yeah,
And this is why the system went into effect in the first place.
that's correct.
Predates most of us, I don't know. Will you remember? No, so.
I was here,
Oh, well, the reason
Yeah.
that the board,
right,
that they went to Time Clock Plus had to do with the Department of Labor, an
Right.
audit, right?
right, it was an audit,
And
right?
some heavy fines, and so they put this in place.
So what, we have really two options here, and one is to up with the Time Clock Plus to get their newer platform, which is, from a cost perspective, about the same. And I'm having a difficult time because of the lack of, well, the systems do connect, but they are not as seamless as certainly as I would like them to be in terms of reporting and being able to get the most functionality from our enterprise system, from our payroll system, right back to our timekeeping system. So this is sooner than I had anticipated. We had no idea that we were end of life on our timekeeping system until they told us you're at that product is at end of life and we're no longer supporting that product.
Kathleen?
Right. I wrote down the number really quickly. Did you say $9,907 for the timekeeping? Or,
So $9,907 is the increase in that tech services line, and I'll go
Okay.
through with you. I had budgeted $3,400, $3,432 for Time Clock Plus for the upcoming budget year. ExecuTime, I'm budgeting at $12,300, and that's a net difference of $8,867. That, coupled with the maintenance of $1,040, brings us to $9,907 additional in that tech services line.
how much of the exec time, which would be the new timekeeping service, if I'm keeping up, is a recurring expense, and how much is a implementation fee?
It would be, I would estimate about $12,000 a year on an ongoing basis for maintenance and support.
12,000?
$12,000. And I don't believe that the solution from Time Clock Plus was many more reasonable. You have to bear in mind that on some of these applications, it doesn't matter how often our employees clock in or out. When we have employees, that's a lot of times what these companies are counting. And when you have your summer help, temp help, your employees, teachers, paras, support staff, we really hit a different, in the volume of timekeeping that goes on is substantial. So our enterprise system operates at a very high level in order to accommodate and work with all the different job classifications and clock-ins and clock-outs and translating that over to payroll.
So it isn't like the old-fashioned punch a clock, just to give you what, you log onto your computer, you come into the building, and in the front office, I'll just use the middle school, we had a little monitor that was about this big, so I had to stand way back, but anyway, you'd log in with your password in, and then I'm here, and you click enter, and it would say, my name and my rank and serial number, and then it would log me in. So we have, at the middle school, hundreds of people that would have to go through that little monitor. I also had it on my desktop in my classroom. So if I remembered to do it and got all the way down from the front office, I could log in there. So we have login spaces throughout the schools, throughout all the schools, where the staff, at the library, in the front offices, in classrooms. I had a couple of my paras would come in and say, can I jump on your computer? They'd log in as themselves and log in. And they had a window of time that they had to log in at the beginning of the day, and a window of time at the end of the day that they had to log out, so to speak. So we have a lot of people going through the system all over the SAU, correct? SAU.
That's great. But I think there was, I'm not sure if it was a memorandum of understanding or not, but that was worked out with the unions about the window of time, and then obviously hourly employees need to clock out because they're paid hourly as opposed to salaried people. Whatever your day was, you clock in, it automatically clocks you out X amount of hours later, 8 hours later, or 7 hours, depending on what year.
Whatever the day is.
So it would not log you out. So it would show every 2 weeks that I'd worked, 3,000 hours
So as a teacher,
as a teacher. Wow, cool. So there was glitches with it all through this time clock program that we've had for a number of years. And speaking as a staff member, people weren't particularly satisfied with. I'd like anything that would make it better, more comfortable, and reasonable for our staff to clock in,
And
wherever they are.
I think that one of the reasons that this program, as I understand the history of it to be, one of the reasons that it did go into effect is because of some Department of Labor
Correct.
violations that had
Correct.
occurred at the time. And if there's anyone with more history on it, please feel free. But I do have more on this product, so.
Mr. Buelow.
I mean, just as I'm listening to how Mrs. Sherman had to log in and log out and
I
type in
didn't
all
log
this
in.
stuff. Don't people have like smart cards? Like you just put it on a sensor and you're in, you put it on the sensor again and you're out.
not in Time Clock Plus.
Not in
Time Clock Plus is a login with a passcode.
Are you looking at some other easier to use system?
No, because that requires additional equipment.
Right, trying to get a comparable that is,
This can be used with your
Less-
cell phone, Peter. You can punch in with your phone.
And don't quote me on the fines, but I believe the Department of Labor fines, Kathy, I don't remember, they were 6 figures, the fines, for not having an adequate timekeeping mechanism in place to track people's time.
So, and I can go through the process with you. So to your point about the, all it is your employee number, your PIN to get into the system, log in,
Yeah.
okay, exit, you're done.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking about a line of people trying to get in the door within a certain time window. And it's like, hurry it up so I can get my stuff in. I mean, that's
so
like,
everybody would go to
unbelievable.
different spots within the
Everyone-
building,
what,
and we
what
made
century,
it work.
what century is this? I think I
Everyone's
missed
got their
something.
routine, they know where to
All
go.
know
We
way to
gotta
do
try to
it.
update our fingerprinting process, so.
Well, that is good. No complaint there.
Early teacher logs in quicker. So anyway,
I don't know what to do.
what the system also does though is
Can't do it.
the system handles time off requests.
That's right.
So if you have a vacation request,
No, not vacation. Yeah, personal day, a legal day,
Professional development.
professional development day, school business day. So
Bereavement.
I'd have school business. I was gone, I was on a field, even if you're out for a field trip, it would log in how
So
many
wh-
days out you were.
So just by way of example, one of the ways that I don't think that our current system generally is call that apt is because you can't tell, for example, what vacation balances are. It's not an integrated system. Our Time Clock Plus system right now is a standalone system. We then import data after it's validated into our enterprise system, which connects with HR and payroll and our finance system to get our payroll process underway. The approval process that goes on in Time Clock Plus is an employee will go in, enter their time when they come in, as you would come in. You would get to the end of the week and say, look back and then approve, yep, I was here that day, I punched in, I punched out, whatever it is. That then sets and goes to your approving manager, who then approves that time as well. And our payroll department then goes and validates and approves all of that time on a final basis. So it's a little bit more involved, than punching in with a card. It does have the validation that you go in, you approve your own time. We can check for edits in the system, and so far the system seems to comply with Department of Labor purposes, but I understand the fines were quite heavy previously. We have a pretty quick turnaround time as well on our payroll, where we'll close out a payroll cycle on payroll week on a Saturday and have our payroll wrapped up, done for, hundreds and hundreds of employees by Wednesday.
It's burdensome, not only for the employee, but for the time clock manager who, Mrs. Sherman, you forgot to clock in this morning. If you clock in now, it shows you here at 10:30, and I know you've been here since 6:30. So she'd have to go back into the system and do whatever, all the magic. So it'd take more time out of her duties to have to do that. That happened probably a lot of times that we forgot to clock in.
But one of the things, when we started to see the system failing, and the irony is it was Jeff put in for a school business request, and I have to approve it.
Yep.
And I got 100 of them for the same day. I had to walk down the hall. I go, Jeff, you having having some kind of crazy moment or something? But
Going 100 times.
so they're calling. They're trying to figure out it's not supported. So it's creating payroll issues for us because when they go to actually pay the employees, they're trying to keep track of the time, and so it's creating a lot of that. You didn't ask for the same day off 100 times, did you really? Or making sure that the time is recorded correctly. So that's where some frustrations happens on that back wall. If you know where Jeff's office is, the payroll folks trying to make sure that everybody gets paid on time and that it's accurate. So that was the beginning of the frustration, I think, and then.
And I think it was more frustrating is I had deleted on my end the redundant requests, but because the back end process hadn't run, they were still showing as active on your end, which was fine. It would clear once that process was run. I didn't have any concerns about it, but it was interesting that did happen. So this particular support covers approximately 1,000 employees. So when you think of the costs, it's not inexpensive. I know that the volume and the number of employees may be surprising. In a lot of instances, it's probably $10 an employee per year. Or per
Anybody
time.
else about trying to find something better, I guess? Kim?
No, another
We have
topic.
another topic. So we're moving on to, this is on time clock or executive clock or.
Yeah. So I heard the new platform for Time Clock Plus was $3,432.
That's
Did
what he
I-
budgeted for. That's not. He said the cost was similar to or more than executive time. That was what he actually budgeted for, thinking we're going to be using the same.
But-
Because that's what it costs
Oh,
annually.
okay.
Now we find
So
out.
what is the actual cost for the newer platform of Time Clock
It would
Plus?
be over, I believe, 15,000 in that range.
Okay, so it's actually more than the Infinite Visions. So my next question is all the equipment that we have that's plugged into Time Clock Plus compatible with feeding into Infinite Visions?
As far as I know, yes. Yeah, we have, if you've gone to any of the schools, even upstairs, if you see on Grace's desk, there's a mini computer just outside Kathy's office. And that's what Time Clock Plus currently utilizes, and that's a single-purpose machine. So those machines should be fine for the Tyler option.
But we don't know that for sure, do we?
We're talking a year out.
It's software. It's on your. It's
It's a
like
software.
laptops and desktops.
So-
The whole approval.
Okay, so in other words, it isn't a Time Clock Plus branded piece of equipment.
No, it's
no, it's
our little
software.
laptops.
It's just software that's been installed on generic equipment. That's,
And-
okay.
And then
okay,
linked into the Infinite Visions
I know,
payroll.
she doesn't.
Okay,
And if you,
okay.
if you think of it, and that's what I think Mr. Velo was indicating, these, these old machines like you punch in, well, now they
Yeah.
have the ones you can hold your key card up to, your ID up to. That's why we don't do that. Then you're locked into their system, then you're locked into their software and their hardware. Mm-mm.
Okay, okay. Okay,
I
thank
know
you.
we'd like to move this along, so if there's anything else, yes, Kim, you had a question about another thing on the budget.
Yes, I'd like to go back to the proposed 2 new hires here and also go back to the previous minutes. Because at the last meeting, we asked for a breakout on salaries by position and the merit pool. So what I see here is a breakout of salaries for existing people, but not for the proposed positions. And I don't see what the merit pool is, so I can't get a good estimation as to what we're looking at here.
So what's your question?
My question is,
What's
what
the
is the
merit pool?
proposed, no, what is the proposed salary and benefits package for the 2 new hires?
Benefits?
And what is, well, I mean, it's, you're
Salary
looking
and
at a
benefits.
9.8% increase in this SAU
Salary,
budget.
benefits,
Salary, benefits, and the merit pool. And I
for
guess-
the 2 people we're gonna hire? For the 2
yeah.
proposed people?
Yeah,
Well, we wouldn't know what their merit award would be before they've even been hired or before they've even been evaluated. You're
Well,
saying what
no,
the.
you have a merit pool of money. Merit
So
pool, what's
the-
the merit pool of money? What is the salary and benefits package for the 2 new hires? Where is that?
The 2 proposed hires.
Yeah.
So our standard benefits package are in all of the ancillary aspects that go along FICA and that sort of thing are already incorporated into the budget. Our benefits packages are.
It's based on salary.
Sorry?
It's based on
Benefit
salary.
packages are not based on salary.
Benefit isn't.
Benefit's a benefit.
But the amount that's contributed,
If you're talking retirement, that would be true, but not,
okay,
Not
that's
health.
partially true,
okay,
I
fine,
guess.
partially true. What is the salary for the proposed new hires? Can we just start
35,000.
with that? 35,000 for both new
Told us
hires.
that last time.
Oh, each.
Each,
35,000 each.
plus benefits. Yes?
Correct.
Plus benefits on top of that.
Okay, and,
So it depends what you take for, right, health insurance. Right?
okay. And am I correct in understanding from what Mrs. Green said that in last year's budget, there was 1 new administrative assistant hire?
That was
So-
several years ago.
Couple
Several
years
years
ago,
ago?
not last year.
Wasn't last year. That's not accurate.
Was,
When was that hire?
Several years ago.
Can't be more than 2.
15, 16? Or
I think it was
14,
approved, I think it was
15.
approved in 14, 15,
14,
and perhaps they were,
15, it
it was
became
hired at an
effective.
odd time. They didn't start on July 1st, I don't believe.
I'm not sure.
who
I
was
know,
on-
I know it remained vacant for some time as we,
At least, it's at least.
it was
2 years.
approved, and then it was about a matter of filling it. It wasn't filled July 1st, and then there was some distribution of responsibilities, and there was some personnel changes because we had some people leaving, so there was a little bit of a reorganization here at that time.
But it was not last year, so we
It
can
absolutely-
clarify that. It
Absolutely was not
last
last year.
year's budget.
No, that's not accurate.
That was your question.
Okay.
Did that answer your questions, Kim, better, or?
Yes, and I'll just make a statement now. I'm against both of these new hires.
Danny?
If I can ask Dr. Metzler a question?
Sure.
Do you think you could manage if you hired 1 full-time to do both?
Well, we're gonna work smart with whatever resources you provide us. Okay, so ideally, we wouldn't ask for something that we didn't believe we needed. We believe that these 2 positions are needed. However, that being said, in the event that, you're trying to be responsible about the budget and, like, again, we're gonna work smart with whatever resources you provide to us, but I would say 1 at a minimum, at an absolute minimum, would be necessary.
Thank you.
That answer your question, Dan? Somebody else? Yes, Brian?
This was probably covered at the last meeting, so I probably have a senior moment. So if,
It's not quite 9 o'clock yet.
so, well, if, as I look at the budget overall, there is really 4 items that jumped up significantly, and if, I'm wondering if Jeff could just give me like a summary, because we just heard about this time clock thing, so you, for example, if your technology went from, I look at expenditures versus proposed budget, so it went from 82.9 up to 125,000. And then you have like employee insurance from 297, 280 up to 412,000. And this big one, other employee benefit from 24,008 up to 115,000. So if you could just give me a quick little on those 4 items. If you want, I can repeat them. You've got, the other ones to me are, I look at the bulk of these things and they're pretty
Standard?
pretty standard, so I just look at those 4 jumping out at me, so.
First
And I
one?
apologize if it came up 2 weeks ago, but no, please.
The first one?
The first one was the, you already covered 9, I think 10,000 with the technology thing, it's up 43,000. Technology services went from 82.9, that's what you spent, up into 125,268.
So
1/4 of
actuals
that.
in 16-17,
Yeah.
you're comparing, okay,
Yeah, I'm comparing,
to the budgeted request for 18-19, gotcha.
yeah, just,
So, I'm, it's exciting for me to talk about, so you might regret asking. I won't take too much time, Madam Chairman. We,
Simon, if you tell me, well, it's good, I'm glad. That's good, we could do some excitement.
Love
There you go.
technology.
Good.
we implemented an employee self-service portal on our enterprise system, which, as you can see, for the number of employees we have between the 2 districts, has made benefits enrollment a much more seamless process, and has given access to our employees to, we intend in the future that they would be able to view their pay stubs and maintain the confidentiality of their data without having to send emails or mailings and that sort of thing out. So that was an initiative that we undertook. There was the implementation of the system as well as the ongoing maintenance of the system. This came about, I believe, when we were having some questions as to where Obamacare was going to be taking us, and the different enrollments that were going to happen, and the different reporting that we are and were required to undertake at the time. Now we have to get into dependence within our system as well, and so we have this as a means to advance technology in the district to get the level of input and reporting that we need cost efficiently and effectively.
So that was, how much was that?
It's 50,000, I believe, between the two, between the implementation and the
It's
ongoing
gonna be
maintenance.
50,000, the overall thing only went up 43,000. We already talked about 9,000.
Yep.
That way we know it'd be up 62,000, so how'd you do that?
Yep, I don't think it happened in 1 year. I think
Oh,
we had,
okay.
yeah,
All right,
Budgeted at 16-17.
okay,
Big
thank you.
amount.
yeah, it was a
So,
straddle,
Didn't
straddle.
happen.
so if you go into this employee insurance,
Employee insurance.
297 up to budgeted 412, that's 115,000.
Correct, and so that was 16-17, and the employee insurance packages can be very costly, and if we have the benefit of employees not taking insurance, we'll take that benefit.
Okay, so this is budgeted, and like in a worst case,
Yeah, we got a
No, not worst case, but in a reasonably,
okay.
best guess,
yeah.
It's a
Okay.
best estimate,
best estimate?
based on when some people leave that may not have been taking, we suspect maybe the new employee might be taking, and
But even then, it's not, I'm assuming that someone's taking a single or, a family, it's somewhere between. I don't assume benefits for 100% at, full family benefits for everyone, but
And this other employee benefits at $90,000, is someone getting a convertible or something?
Where are you?
What's that one?
Other employee
The
benefits.
other employee benefits went from 24,008 up to 115,000, so something jumped that.
yeah, so, okay, so it's a little confusing. We have the employee retirement line, which is really more of the New Hampshire State retirement, but the other employee benefits, fair enough, that it would appear to be a car or something to that effect. We had a finding,
That was a
it was
joke,
before
right?
what's that?
It was a joke.
No, I know, it just,
it's a straight guy.
All right, sorry.
so, we had a finding a number of years ago, and it was before I became involved, and one of the issues was that we had not been budgeting appropriately for severance and retirement, if someone were to retire or leave the district, to properly budget what our obligations are in that. So we now account for not everyone leaving at the same time, but any obligations that we may have under a reasonable scenario. So what you're seeing in the 24 is more of a reflection that in some cases it just got spread out differently. So you'll see the employee retirement in 16-17 is, it's 122 actual, 107 budgeted. We have that 114 in this case, 115 as a projection, which does not fully cover, but reasonably measures what our obligations are to
So
cover.
that came out in the audit, right?
Yeah, it was,
Isn't
that was an,
what
un-
audit
it was an
point?
unfunded liability that the auditors highlighted, and the board elected to not fully fund it, as to Mr. Downs' point, but to try to
80%.
cover what we believe is a reasonable amount, because we do have people who are eligible in any given year to retire, and they could, and that, their leave balance would create that liability for us.
I believe the technical was an adverse opinion.
Adverse opinion, yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Does that help, Brian, those?
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions? Yes, Donna?
Yeah, I want to follow up with that. So how come the receipts or the revenue for the beginning fund balance for 18-19 is only showing the same $25,000? Shouldn't it be reflective of the almost $100,000 that we're squirreling away there for the unfunded liabilities?
So you're talking 18-19?
The
Yeah.
receipts, you mean?
We just closed out 16-17. We only have budget numbers for 17-18, and I don't know what that number is going to be for 18-19. It's conceivable that 25,000 could be reasonable or unreasonable. But we can't carry over to 630 balance over to 630-17 over to 7/1/18. We have a gap here in the middle.
No, well, I'm saying that the 17-18 is gonna have probably $100,000 surplus in the other employee benefits.
We don't know that.
We don't know that.
Well, we certainly know it's not gonna be $25,000, which it's always, has been predicted year in and year out. I mean, there's a lot more money there. $25,000 seems, I mean, not everybody,
That's one person, I think.
And one person
One person
potentially
retire.
could eat that whole amount, and if two people go, you're not going to have enough.
so in the 17-18, this year's budget, so this operating year, what year did we have to pay for Mr. Stokinger's retirement? It was the
16-17.
previous year, 16-17.
Correct.
That's right.
Okay, so it seems to me we should have way more than $25,000 as a beginning fund balance for the next year.
I only have budget for 17-18.
Can I ask a clarifying question? I think what Mrs. Green is trying to ask is, why are you not budgeting for the actual surplus? In other words, in the beginning fund balance, why, for the 2018-19 school year, do you not have a higher amount because she's anticipating that there's going to be a surplus generating from the unfunded liabilities
I
or
don't,
other employment?
I don't budget a surplus, and in this case, if anything that we had from 16-17 would be budgeted for 18-19. If I thought that we were gonna be more than 25,000 because of the other employee benefits, I think that would probably be somewhat irresponsible from a budgeting perspective. Now, just because that line shows 24,000, right, versus a budget of 110, I've identified a few areas where those costs have shown up. And if you look at the salaries line in particular, you'll see $1,046,000 versus $956 in the budget. So that 100,000 really is there to mark the risk, liability. It doesn't cover us 100%, but where it's there, other employee benefits, it's there as a placeholder, and it can be picked up wherever those benefits happen to, wherever that package happens to hit at the time the employee leaves. So I don't think that it would be fair, because I can't take this year's number and move it, I can't take the 16-17 number and move it to 18-19 as a beginning surplus there. And the budget numbers you're looking at for the 17-18 were set not quite a year ago, but
That's a last year, this year, next year issue.
Yeah, it's,
You're confusing the budget years with what should actually take place.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, you can't put the 16-17 surplus on the 18-19 budget.
I'm not, it has nothing to do with 16-17. I'm looking at 17-18, the
Yeah, well,
year we're in
This is
now.
our
There's
year.
no- There's no idea,
No idea what's gonna be left.
no idea,
Well,
People can still retire.
no idea.
yes, people can still retire. Okay, so let me ask you this. If nobody retires and we have a whopping surplus of $85,000 in that line, what happens to that money?
Well, we have obligations that could continue to be funded through that line. Fund balance would simply increase. We may still be found from our auditors to be, under where we need to be from that perspective. But the fund balance may grow to begin to chip away at that liability.
There's only two places it can go, right? And I think it has to go one place. It either carries over and you ask for less money from the taxpayers the next year. So to your point, you would expect to see $88,000 on that line next year where it says actual, right? Or, I guess, could it go back to the districts? And that I don't know.
No.
But I would suspect it would be in that line right there.
Yeah, and that would still not really cover what we would have for an obligation in the event that we needed it, so.
But the fact of the matter is, it could also just be spent in other lines. It could be moved around and spent in other lines.
Which, with the 100,000?
Yes, or the 85. I'm just guessing that there'd be 85,000 surplus there in that line. Because the whole point of funding it is because we're building it up.
Correct.
But we can't save it from one year to the next.
I'm gonna give Jason a chance to see if he can clarify
Yeah,
too.
Mr. Dow, can you just clarify the process? Because I know we tend to see this more at a district level. But the balance transfer approval process by the board in order to, I guess, let me phrase this quite simply. In other words, you can't just look at it and say, oh, I got $100,000 here. I think I'll give myself a $100,000 bonus.
Right.
Like moving it from that line to my payroll line or whatever.
Yeah.
Can you just explain the balance transfer, the transfer
Yeah,
process and approval process?
So typically, and Hampstead's a little bit different than Timberlane, so using the two districts as examples, Hampstead has a $5,000 limit on budget transfers. So if the budget is not in an account and needs to be spent, that transfer would go to the board for approval. And so in Timberlane, because the budget is that much bigger, it's a $25,000 threshold. And in the case of needing it, the board is typically advised as to what the cause or what the need of it is. So, there is a process in place.
Thank you.
And at the SAU, what's the process?
It'd be similar, be similar, and I don't know what happened last year or in years prior, but,
I
similar.
haven't had to come and ask you to move any, we've stayed
Right.
within the lines.
Right, my point is only that it doesn't.
It's
yeah,
not
I
like
mean,
a free, oh,
Yeah,
it's
it's
there.
not just money that you just
Can't
get
just
to
move it around.
buy a new car with,
Yeah.
to Mr. Boyle's point.
Right.
We've had some people leave and we've had to pay some separation costs. That's the only place I don't see any, I haven't had to ask, I haven't had to ask them to move any, the lines seem to be sufficient, they seem to be properly budgeted for and adequate in terms of what we need, so.
Kathleen, you had your hand up.
I did. Jason really covered what I was gonna say. But I'll ask a question since I have the floor. This right here is just the budget. We don't really know what the actual appropriations raised by taxes is going to be until when?
For what, for this?
For instance, if there's $100,000 left in the other employee benefits line at the end of the year, and we keep that $100,000 in the other employee benefits line, the difference between what the budget is and what the taxes are, the appropriations that are raised through
Correct, yeah,
taxes.
the appropriations are budgeted and are what they are, so what you see for appropriations are what go through on an annual basis to the respective districts' budgets. That's the only source of income for the SAU, it's budgeted and it goes through. We figure that we'll carry a $25,000, I'll say surplus, but $25,000 over to the subsequent budget year. But typically, there's no reduction in the amount, just based on the way that this is budgeted, both up front and through the districts. There's no change in the actual district allocation, district appropriation as it comes through.
As far as the percentages go,
Correct. And as far as the dollars go.
and the dollars as well. So if there is now you've confused me. Now, if there is no deductions from the other employee benefits line, which I understand that we need to budget for it, we've been directed by our auditors to do so, and we're not even fully budgeting it, this is a compromise. It's $115,069 for this line. If nothing gets spent out of that line, then the following year, we have that money that is retained. The budget number stays the same. However, the amount of money that we have to ask the taxpayers to come up with would change. That's the difference between the budget and what the appropriations are.
Correct.
Do you understand?
I get, theoretically, I
So-
get what you're saying. Yeah.
So, since the year for 2017-18 has just begun, and it ends June 30th, or is it July 1st technically?
June 30th.
June 30th.
Yep.
Okay, so we have to wait to find out June 30th, 2018, how much of this current year would get carried over into 2018-19. When would the taxpayers be made aware? It takes a while. It probably wouldn't hit them till their second bill, right?
Well, no, what you see here is what would be paid by the districts in terms of what the breakdown with the allocation.
But we have to charge them because we don't necessarily know that figure at that point in time either.
We charge them that, and if there is an excess, it would build up that fund balance.
Okay.
I can tell you it would not. The first tax bill of the year is based on half the previous tax rate from that preceding year. Your second tax bill reflects the increase for the whole year, so that's why you almost take a double hit in that second tax bill.
And that's the November, December bill, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. Other questions about this budget? And I'll entertain some motions. Mrs. Musenko.
I don't have a comment, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I am not in favor of hiring 2 additional employees, but I do feel we need one, so I'd like to make a motion that we reduce this budget by 1 employee.
Dollar amount would be the 35,000. I would
35,000.
say probably,
And
I'd let
benefits.
Attorney Dowd if there are any
Benefits
benefits to
to
take into
hire.
consideration.
I think that you could make some demands on a higher, not a higher, but a higher pay grade to satisfy substantially more than what you would get from cutting one position at 35. So if you took, 35 positions, $35,000 a year positions, and made them one position at $45,000 a year, you'd save some on benefits, and we could obtain an employee who's a little bit higher of a skill level and perhaps able to take on more than what one at 35 would be able to take on individually. That would probably be optimal.
If I hear you correctly, you're saying you would get 1 for 45?
Correct.
Can you get 1 for 40?
I guess, yeah. I think 40, yeah.
So that would be a $30,000 reduction from what was budgeted.
We have a second for Mrs. Musenko's
Second.
motion. Mr. Belo, discussion. Kim. Kim.
So you're gonna have some person at 40,000. Which person is this? Is this the transportation person that's now gonna be able to do administrative functions? Or are we hiring, you want 1 position, so which position is it? Because they asked for 2 full-time positions. Is this a half-time transportation and a half-time admin? Because I'm not really following this.
I would have to defer to Dr. Metzler and see how he would want to use that 1 person.
Yeah, the current plan, obviously, we've had some movement. Lorna Walker has left the HR department and has taken on a role in payroll. Finance, excuse me. And so the distribution of responsibilities, there'll still be those same responsibilities that we spoke to you 2 weeks ago about. But as we replace Lorna's position in HR, and if we're able to bring on this other person, we have to look at the skill sets, and we'll probably have to distribute that work, help with the transportation, certainly some of the administrative relief for Mrs. Belcher, in terms of putting together reports and things for folks when they ask from the community. So I see a reorganization with those 2 new positions, but it really will be based on the skills, and I do agree with Attorney Dowd. I think with a little higher pay grade than potentially the 2 lower end grades, we might be able to attract probably a more seasoned assistant to bring on board, and we'll be able to take on more responsibilities. Now, will $5,000 more than what we initially asked, will that be enough? You never know until you're interviewing and asking those questions about salary requirements and those sorts of things. We do offer excellent benefits. We do think it's a great place to work. We certainly are supported by a board that gives us, resources to get the work done, and this certainly would be helpful in the big picture.
In that regard.
Yep.
Other questions or comments? Yes, Kim?
So this is the first I've heard, so, and if we need to go into a non-public to have a discussion about this, I'd be happy to do so. So you just mentioned that Lorna Walker is now acting as a bookkeeper.
I moved her internally, that's
You
correct.
moved her internally. So I'm looking at the salaries here of your bookkeepers that you had previously, and I'm looking at her salary. Was there a salary adjustment made?
The salaries will be based on the responsibilities. The job that she vacated and the job that she has are not necessarily the same jobs that they were prior to her moving. So some of her responsibilities, not all, some she will retain because of the skill set, and some new responsibilities she'll take up from the other job. Again, we're redistributing, reorganizing responsibilities based on skill. So her position is a high-level position in terms of support, and she's certainly capable and does an excellent job. So we thought it was in the best interest of the SAU to make that move internally.
I just caution us to be careful if we're
Well,
going to start
I
speaking names.
do have some more, I'd like to request a non-public for further
Sure.
discussion on this. Under
91.
A:3, section C.
Matters which, if discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of a person other than a member of the board.
I'll second that, just to give me the opportunity to vote against it. Because I don't think we should be looking at individuals' salaries and all, that's not in our purview.
Definitely
I'm
appropriate.
Not the
looking
purview of
at
the board.
positions.
Right, those, what I call the support salaries, are not our decisions. These are, we don't hire them. So anyway, there's a motion on the floor.
I'm sorry, what was it,
Can I
A?
just-
Oh,
that you chose?
he's already
Yeah,
seconded.
Peter,
Was it under A?
C, she said.
Can I ask? I have a question.
I'm gonna do A and
We
C.
have
A's compensation.
two potential
You should be-
new positions in this budget that I think a non-public would be appropriate to discuss.
Others?
There's a motion on the floor, discussion. So, there's no reputational issue
I think it's A.
here.
I'm sorry, it should be A. Will somebody second it on A?
I second.
Be A and C, I guess. A and C.
A, B, and C.
I would say it's A and C. I mean, it's hard to, it's A and C.
Are you all right with that?
I'm okay with A.
Okay, Peter? So we'll poll the board.
For A and C.
A
May-
and
may
C
I-
is Kim suggestion.
Add
To the
one
record.
more comment here. It's not salaries. What I just heard is that we're talking about reorganization of the administrative staff.
Not our job, but
Yeah, that's my job, Kim, that's what I do.
Okay, well, that's fine.
let's go into non-public and then discuss this, so poll the board.
Mrs. Abrazizi?
Yes.
Mr. Belo?
No.
Mr. Boyle?
Yes.
Mr. Cipriano?
No.
Dr. Farah?
Yes.
Mrs. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Guide?
No.
Mrs. Parnell?
No.
Mrs. Sherman?
No.
Mr. Spiro?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Nope.
Mrs. Yasenka?
No.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 no's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses.
Okay, that fails.
Non-public fails.
So, we have a motion on the floor. Have I lost my mind after 9 o'clock there? We did not have a motion on the floor?
There's a motion.
Then I'd second it.
To reduce the budget and look for one employee, 40, is that what you were thinking, Karen? At 40, that the superintendent could then use as he sees fit to make this structure work.
Correct,
Am I clarifying it?
yes.
I want to call for a vote. Yes, Donna?
Thank you. We were just lectured at great length about the need for non-public discussions. And
Yeah.
what has
Got
this
it.
board done? This board has completely undermined the request of Timberlane
No,
representatives.
No, they ignored legal counsel. See
Um,
better.
Okay.
There's two people right
Point
here.
of
Where are
order.
they from?
That's what they did.
Point of order. This doesn't belong in public right now.
I'm gonna move the question.
This
move-
does belong in public. The other thing didn't.
We sealed the minutes.
I don't think it's fair to move the question. You're talking about adding a full-time
We have a
person
motion on the
here.
floor.
I know, but I have a question, I have more comments on this.
Okay,
Okay? I'd like to go back to the minutes of the previous meeting where there was discussion about these positions. One of them has to do with increased demands made of the transportation coordinator and the need to provide necessary resources to create efficiencies in the transportation operations. That, I still do not have an answer as to what that means. The bus reduction at Sandown North is used as a rationale for this position. My understanding is that reducing a bus right now at this point is not saving the district any money because of the way our bus tiering system works. So if that's the rationale, that bus needs to come back online. The other is the potential grievance due to additional time required of staff members to ensure students safely board the buses. The issue here, again, is, it goes to Sandown. The Sandown school is releasing at 3 o'clock versus 3:10. So that's an issue with the buses getting there because they're dropping off from the middle school. So these issues are certainly issues, but I do want to point out that that's why those issues are there.
Dan,
I think it was alluded that there was issues in Hampstead as well. I mean, this is the SAU board, not the Timberlane board, right? So each town has an issue with that. He's recognizing that, saying that they need more support there. That's what this is about, not just Sandown.
May I answer that?
sure, Kim.
Yes, it certainly is. It's an issue of needing more support, and that's why I requested a non-public.
We have a motion on the floor in a second. Would like to have the motion reread, anyone, before we vote? We ready to vote?
I'd like discussion.
More?
Thank you. You know, we have given ample support. Here, we were just informed about a very expensive human resource portal that was installed through Infinite Visions, extremely expensive. And at the same time as we were doing that, we hired an assistant HR person. So that was a new position, plus there was technology upgrades, huge savings, one would think. But now we need some transportation, but the assistant business administrator was hired specifically with transportation expertise to assist in this area. So every time, you know, it seems that there is never any satisfying the demands of the SAU while our student population diminishes by 1,100, if not 1,200 by now. And no new districts have been added to the SAU's oversight. All we're doing is saying, give me more, I need more. That's what we're saying constantly. And it's never saying, thank you, taxpayers, we have enough and we are going to manage.
Okay.
That's what management is, learning to do with the resources that you're given.
Other opinions, declarations, comments that we need to make? If not, I'm calling for a vote. The motion is for one employee.
That's correct. Mrs. Yusenko motion to reduce the budget by one proposed new employee, which would represent a $30,000 reduction. It was seconded by Mr. Bela.
Oh, 1 second, didn't we change that to a $40,000 event?
We did, so it was two 35s at 70, and then we reduced it by 35 to 40.
So it's a $30.
So
So
$30,000.
that's-
Okay, sorry.
That's how we got to 30.
Okay?
Sorry,
So we get
at this
to
point, I'm math challenged, sorry.
Okay.
All in favor of the motion, all in favor of the motion, indicate by raising your hand.
8,
Opposed?
Can you keep your hands up? Okay, Karen. Thank you.
5. So it's 8 to 5, is that correct?
4, please.
8 to 4, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. 8 to 4. So now we have a budget with a reduction of 30,000 and,
Would you like Attorney Dowd to read the new number?
yes, read the new number.
$21. Yep, 85, 511.
2185,
Yep. 511.
511, sorry. Madam Chairman. That is the new bottom line, if you want to call it that. And then there would be a different, obviously, districts' allocations to change it. Can you do that right now, too, for us? Jeff?
It's irrelevant.
No.
It's irrelevant.
Let me sit with the numbers for a little while here.
Okay, all right, all right.
So I'd like to point out that 30,000 isn't enough of a reduction because that doesn't include any of the benefits. Benefits are typically 40% of the salary, and the benefits are already baked into this budget. So we should have reduced the budget by at least.
They're not baked in at 100%, to use your word.
At 40%.
Well, they're not baked into the budget. We're not budgeting benefits at 100%. Attorney Dowd can explain that again if you'd like, about the formula he
Chairman,
uses.
point of order,
Stop,
shouldn't he go
stop.
through you to speak?
Yes, thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Okay. So, do you have another motion, Mrs. Green, or?
Well, I would like to make a motion that we reduce the budget by a reasonable amount of benefits associated with that single employee. And I would like to propose that is a 40%. So I would say like 14, an additional 14,000. So I make a motion to reduce the budget by 14,000 to reflect the benefits package of removing one employee.
Removing that employee. So,
Second that.
motion by Mrs. Green, second by Mr. Boyle to remove another 14,000 from what we've already removed to cover the benefits at approximately 40%. Kathleen?
Input from Mr. Dowd on if that's an accurate figure.
No.
No, it's low.
I have some fixed costs that are associated with FICA retirement that are salary attached, and they attach at that at wherever we're at. So at the additional 5,000, I think you're looking at a benefits based on position. I have benefits based on dollars, based on payroll as well, and those are still fixed. For that additional 55,000, that doesn't attach to the position.
Moreover, and granted, it may not be a lot, but we also did increase the salary of the one remaining. So 40% on a 40K salary is different than a 40% on the third. Not that, as you've just explained, that's not the only factor in there, but the loading is on a higher salary as well, when you do a fully loaded compensation.
We have a motion on the floor. Anyone want to make any amendments, or are we good with this? So the motion is to remove another 14,000 from the bottom line. I'll call for a vote then. All in favor? 4. Opposed? So that motion, does that fails? So we're back again to this bottom line. Any other motions you wish to make at this time? Peter?
We accept a budget of $2,185,511.
And move to public hearing?
Pardon me?
And move to public hearing?
And move to the public hearing, yes.
Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second that.
Mr. Beal has made a motion to accept the bottom line of $2,185,511, seconded by Mr. Cipriano to move this to the public hearing, which is November 18th or 15th? Did I get the date?
I think it
15th.
is. Yep, November 15th.
Any discussion of this motion? Yes, Mrs.
I have a
Green?
question.
Oh, Kathleen, I'll let her.
Sorry.
Go ahead, ask your question.
On the employee benefits, I know that we're trying to project a costs on health insurance a year and a half out. When do we get a more solid figure on that?
We should have it in the next couple of weeks.
So we'll have
Couple
it
of
before
weeks?
public hearing?
Yeah, you know, in
Or
talking to
at public
people,
hearing.
I think it's gonna be somewhere between 7 and 13%.
You're talking about the GMR?
The greatest maximum rate we
Yes.
have to budget for.
Yes.
I believe we budgeted at 10%, but it's not 100%, like I was trying to explain before, you know, when it was being inaccurately conveyed to the board about how we budget for the benefits. So he has a formula that he figures out, and we think it should be somewhere between 7 and 13, we're hoping. Hoping on the lower end of 10, so there might be some potential savings in terms of insurance that you might be able to discuss at the public hearing, or not. Or we might be asking to add money if it's
More than
above
10%,
10.
Yeah, it's been a little volatile, hasn't it?
Did what?
It's been a little volatile, hasn't it?
Yeah, there are
Health
some folks that think
insurance
it could be as high as 20%
Right.
this year because of all the things that are going on at Washington, but the folks that we talk to think that range that I gave to you a minute ago is probably closer, and probably on a little under 10, we think.
market. Okay.
Mr. Guide?
If I could ask Jeff a question?
Sure.
So Jeff, I just have a question. I know I've probably asked this 4 times till Sunday. The 114, let's just say, the 17-18, this year's budget for the SAU. Say there is a surplus of 40 grand, just throwing a number. Where would I see it in this section for the, I'm not gonna see it until the 19-20 budget?
No, 25 would be offset against next year, against the subsequent year, just as it's in the budget.
Okay,
And the fund balance would grow by the balance.
so the fund balance would go up.
Correct.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Donna?
So where is the merit pool in this budget, and how much is it?
That's your question. I think it was Kim's question too earlier. Where's the merit
And
pool?
last time,
Where's the money for the merit pool?
Salaries.
Say 3%.
Right, it's in salary, so how much is being budgeted for the merit pool?
Total of
3%.
3%.
3%.
3% off that salary line.
It's been the same budget line the last 6 years. Well, no, that's not true. The last 4 or 5 anyway, it's been at 3%.
Okay, so I'd
Okay,
like
that
to
answers your
suggest,
question.
thank you, yes, and I'd like to suggest that our SAU employees are amply paid, and that we should freeze the salaries as they are with no increases next year.
Motion
So,
Hey, we got a motion.
Motion on the
That's
table.
not to the motion.
well, then I would like to amend the motion to reduce the bottom line by 3% of the salary line, and I don't have a calculator right now, but I would guess, no. $300,000?
It's
No.
a third of,
33,000, sorry, 33,000.
So work out the numbers. Sit for a second and work out the numbers.
Three
And then we'll-
percent of a million would be 30,000, right?
That's correct. Do
So-
we have a second for that? So Mrs. Green's amendment is to remove the merit pool from the salary line. Do we have a second? I hear no second, so we're back to the main motion, which is $2,185,511 to move to the budget. To the hearing, I'm sorry, public hearing. See, it happens, it's like after 9 o'clock. All right, if not, I'll call for a vote then. All in favor of 2,185,511?
8, 9,
You got us, Kathy? Opposed?
2, 3, thank you.
So 9-3, is that correct? Did I count correctly?
That's correct.
9, 4, 3 against. All right, continue studying, bring this to the next meeting on the 15th of November, if I've got that date right, and we can continue to discuss. Administrators report, have you got anything for us tonight?
We have none.
And I'm moving,
motion to adjourn?
Second.
I'm not entertaining a motion, I'm adjourning at 9:29. Thank you, everybody, for your time. All right.